Over here to your left is, I say this about almost everywhere we go, and it kind of becomes a joke with groups because I go, this is one of my favorite places in Israel, and then kind of like, but really seriously, if I had to kind of like rank maybe top 5, this might be top 5. And what you're looking at here is a gate from the Canaanite period. Saeed was telling us earlier about building with mud bricks, and you can see that these were mud brick walls and how they were built. But I want to tell you what the significance of this site is, why I really love it so much, not only historically because of Canaanite walls. By the way, you can see the arch of the gate, the city gate, Canaanite gate. It was believed, for the longest time that Romans kind of developed the arch, and this kind of threw that archaeologically, historically, architecturally. They had to kind of rewrite the books because here was an arch gate. But here's what's so significant about this and why I love it so much. Those steps that are leading up to that gate, I'm convinced that Abraham's feet touched those steps. And, there are a lot of places and a lot of things people are going to show you that are kind of traditional sites. I'm not much into traditional sites. Let's get a little bit closer now. We'll let them get their photographs out.
Somebody said. Oh, they are mine. Very much.
Okay. So, and when I get done, you have a couple minutes to also take some pictures of it. But let me tell you, so I really believe that if, there's a lot of places people show you in Israel that are kind of traditional sites. Hey, John the Baptist put his foot here. And, I'm not into shrines, a lot of shrines and things like that. But I really believe if I was a betting man, I would absolutely lay my money on the fact that Abraham's feet touched those steps. And that's pretty incredible. The reason I say that is because of Genesis chapter 14. Let me tell you about what happens in Genesis chapter 14. In verse 8 of Genesis chapter 14, you have a coalition of 5 kings who get together. Now, back in that time period, kings were kings of cities. And so every city was a little state on its own. And so you have this coalition of kings in verse 8 of chapter 14, and the rebel kings of Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, and Bela prepared for battle in the valley of the Dead Sea. And so this coalition of 5 kings then goes against a coalition of 4 kings. And the text lists those particular kings. And so that coalition of 5 kings, they were victorious. And so we get to verse 11, and it says, the victorious invaders then plundered Sodom and Gomorrah and headed for home. That's what you did. You go out, you attack cities, you defeat cities, you plunder cities, you take back the treasure, and you take back the people for slaves. And so the victorious invaders plundered Sodom and Gomorrah, headed for home, taking with them all the spoils of war and the food supplies. Now verse 12, they also captured Lot. Okay? And we know about Lot. And so they captured Lot, who was Abraham's nephew. Uh-oh. And they captured Lot, Abraham's nephew, who lived in Sodom, and carried off everything that he owned. Well, the text then says, but one of Lot's men escaped and reported to Abraham, the Hebrew, who was living near the oak grove belonging to Mamre, the Amorite. Mamre and his relatives, Eshcol and Aner, were Abraham's allies. When Abraham heard that his nephew Lot had been captured, he mobilized 318 trained men who had been born into his household. Okay, now I want you to think about Abraham and kind of what you know and what you picture about Abraham. You kind of picture him as this shepherd and this great man of faith. Shepherd, and he was a great man of faith. But you need to understand what Abraham really was, in addition to a man of faith. Abraham was an ancient Near Eastern warlord. And the fact that he had 318 warriors who were born in his house shows what an extremely powerful man Abraham was. And so this one of Lot's men who escaped tells Abraham, who do you go to? You go to not only is this Lot's uncle, but he is a regional warlord with a lot of power. And so he mobilizes his household army, and it says, then he set in pursuit of this army. So this coalition of 5 kings, Abraham takes his men in pursuit of those kings. And the text then says, he pursued that army until he caught up with them at Dan. And so this is where Abraham caught them. And this is where he began to absolutely lay the wood to them. And so, verse 15, there he divided his men and attacked during the night. And that coalition of kings, their army fled, and Abraham chased them as far as Hobah, north of Damascus. And so Abraham's just pushing them north, and they are just hightailing it out of here, and Abraham is just dogging them every step of the way with his army. You know, one of the great Southern Army, Confederate Army generals, Stonewall Jackson, and he was an amazing general, honestly was. Deeply religious man, by the way, man of faith. And, you know, he was one of the greatest generals, and as he talked about just basic war strategy and how to win is you attack your enemy and you put him to flight and you keep attacking and keep attacking and keep attacking and keep attacking. That's what Abraham does. So the battle starts right here at Dan, and he pushes north. And then after Abraham finishes them, it says, verse 16, Abraham recovered all the goods that had been taken, and he brought back his nephew Lot with his possession and all the women and other captives. So Abraham won this thing. And so as he's coming back then, verse 17, after Abram returned from his victory over this king and all of his allies, the king of Sodom went out to meet him in the valley of Shaveh, that is the king's valley. And so as Abraham's making his way back, these kings of different city-states are coming out to meet Abraham. Why do you think they would come out to meet Abraham? You don't want any of that. He is powerful. He is this incredibly powerful warlord. And so you come out, you greet them, you bring them into the city, you give them tribute, you pay honor to them. That's what you did. And so we see one of those kings is mentioned. And then also verse 18, and Melchizedek, and we won't even get into that about Jesus and Melchizedek, in the order of Melchizedek. And Melchizedek, the king of Salem, by the way, that's early Jerusalem, Salem. The king of Salem and a priest of God Most High brought Abraham some bread and wine, and Melchizedek blessed Abraham with these blessings. Blessed be Abraham by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth. And Abraham gave Melchizedek a tenth of all the goods that he recovered. And the king of Sodom said to Abram. And so all these kings are coming out as Abraham is coming back with his army and bringing back all the captives that this coalition of kings had taken. Well, it doesn't mention Dan in this. It just mentions the kings of Sodom and the king of Salem that came out. But this is where the battle started. He pursued that coalition right here to Dan. Because I don't think the text is telling the king of every city-state. It just mentions 2 specifically. But I think it's right to assume, as most scholars did, that as Abraham comes back, every king of every city-state is going to do just like the king of Sodom and the king of Salem. They're going to come out and they're going to send a delegation out to meet Abraham and his returning force. And so if that's the case, the king of this city-state here, the Canaanite king that would ultimately be Dan, would have come out, would have greeted Abraham, and Abraham would have come into the city. And so if he did, and I think it's very reasonable to think he did, Abraham would have walked up those steps. And so if there's any place in all of the land that we can point to and say, hey, there's a real high probability that the father of our faith, the one who models faith in such a way. I mean, we think of that ultimate test of faith. And Abraham, that the father of our faith. You know, in the New Testament, we're called descendants of Abraham. We are the real descendants of Abraham. Anybody who belongs to Jesus is the real descendant of Abraham. The one who our faith begins with, I believe, walked up those steps. And so it just kind of brings us closer to one that we are called to model our faith after. All right, take your pictures. Great place, and enjoy it now.